glad you're here. My name is Crispina French, and I'm your host of the Rags to Riches podcast. I'm an OG textile alchemist, worked my way through art school making ragamuffins from thrift store sweaters way back in the 1980s. That college side hustle grew into a full-fledged business, and here I am to show you that you can do that too. Together, we'll navigate hurdles, challenges, and accomplishments while crafting your profitable textile upcycling business to serve you and the planet. My guests and I will cover topics including material sourcing, business savvy, product development, sales and marketing, and self-care. Overcoming struggles, celebrating wins, and reaping rewards of running your very own textile upcycling business is what we are all about. Are you ready to be inspired, energized, and supported? This is the Rags to Riches Textile Upcycling Podcast. This episode of the Rags to Riches Textile Upcycling Podcast is brought to you by The Unruffled. The Unruffled is a vibrant and feminine collection of slow-made garments and accessories handmade with love by Sandra Primo. Sandra is based in Austin, Texas, and every item she makes is thoughtfully constructed from finely sourced, reused textiles, favoring silks and lace and crochet. Bespoke, one of one, encouraging an infinite circle of recovery. Step into the world of The Unruffled at www.theunruffled.com. And visit the show notes page for this episode at ragstoriches.eco for links and more information. Hey, you're tuning in to the latest episode of the most awesome podcast out there, Rags to Riches, and we have got an awesome guest today. Erin Beatty from Rentrayage is joining me today, and I am really excited to learn more about her awesome business. And it turns out that we're kind of like neighbors. Erin's located in Connecticut, and actually a little chunk of Connecticut that's not too far from my little chunk of Massachusetts. So welcome, Erin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Crispina.
Sure. I'm so glad. So, let me just sort of get people acclimated by asking you to share about your business and tell me about your business.
So my business is, it's, an upcycling company essentially called Rentrayage. I started it in 2019, and this was after the closure of a company that I had previously called Suno. And it was a pretty devastating closure. And so I was pregnant at the time with my second child, and I kind of popped out, and I knew I couldn't keep working in the way I had been working. I'd just seen the amount of waste that went into the fashion industry. I'd worked at big companies. I've worked, I was creative director at Tory Burch, and I started at Gap Inc. At Gap back in the day, and I loved this job, and it was a really good company, but we used to burn the samples, and this was like 25 years ago. I don't think they knew any better. I don't think anyone knew any better. It was like not a bad thing to say out loud that the samples were going to get burned. And it was just...
That's crazy. That is so crazy. And so was Suno also a fashion brand?
Suno was also a fashion brand. We originally started working with vintage congas, which are these East African fabrics. And then we moved into doing these printed textiles and producing kind of worldwide with various artisans. But it wasn't as sustainable as what I ultimately created with Rentrayage. And I think I just realized, once you kind of start to wrap your head around fashion's footprint, it's just devastating. Mm-hmm. It's really powerful. And it's kind of like, you cannot unknow it. And so that's what happened to me.
That's so true. I feel that actually also, that's a lot of what motivates me as well. And I feel like, before you wrap your head around it, you, like you said, you don't know, like there's so many people in the world that just have very little attachment or knowledge of the waste in general. And then the fashion industry is very, very wasteful. So it's really something that I think as we're going forward with our textile upcycling businesses, we have this beautiful opportunity to have like a real impact, right? Like you saw that and then you were like, what can I do that's going to address this problem? And now you're doing it. And it's like this opportunity that is out there for people who are really motivated to do that. So talk about how you got interested in like, well, first of all, let's back up a bit. Like, so did you go to college to learn about fashion?
Well, I always wanted to be a designer, but my mom was a professor and my dad was a lawyer. So that was, art school was discouraged. So I went to UCLA and I got a degree in English and Spanish. And then I went to work for The Gap. And while I was there, I did this retail management program under Mickey Drexler. I have a really classic kind of like retail/fashion background. And it's like a 7-month training program. And then I became a merchandiser. And I was just like in spreadsheets. And I was like, what's going on? This is not my destiny. And I talked to my bosses in my area, and they spoke to the creative director, whose name was Pina Ferlisi, and she said that she wanted to move me to New York. And so I got moved to New York, and I became really close with her. And I told her I really wanted to be a designer. I was a product developer, so I was kind of like the glue holding a lot of things together at that time, which was, a wonderful role from a learning perspective. But she was like, if you want to be a designer, you need to go back to art school. And so then I went back to Parsons.
How cool. How nice to have that like mentoring happening at your job where it was like, okay, this is not impossible, but this is what you need to do. That's so cool.
It was the realization that you could actually have a career in fashion, and there's a lot of working people in fashion in New York City. So it was the permission I needed at the time I needed it.
That's awesome. So you went to Parsons and you were focused on fashion. That was like, were you thinking about upcycling at that point or no? Not yet.
No. What you're taught in art school, especially in fashion school, is like, it's kind of all okay in the name of creativity. Like what it's really about is just developing the most creative thing. So at Suno, we developed so many of our own fabrics and we were so lauded and rewarded for it. We were part of like the CFDA Fashion Fund and we were the very first finalists for the LVMH Prize and we won a CFDA award. And it's just, you're really celebrated for just creativity, but that's just development and development and development. And so what I saw happening is I was like, there's all these kind of, NGO people talking around sustainability, and then there's all these designers designing, and that connection isn't happening,
Mm-hmm.
And so I was really researching sustainable fabrics, and I was like, these are not there yet. It's not to a place where I feel confident, like offering this to a consumer and being like, this is it. This is so cool. This is like the next thing. And it wasn't until I really started to explore vintage, which I had always bought, I had always tailored, I'd always changed, but like really started to buy it and figure out how to make it feel totally different, totally new, celebrate the one of a kind aspect of it. And then eventually get into how you produce a similar style over and over. That I really felt like I was creating something that A, I really believed in, and B, I was just dying to put on. I mean, some of our jackets, I want to put on immediately.
Yeah. Yep. That's so cool. And the fact that you said you wanted to figure out a way to create like a repeatable design. Of course, everything is going to be one of a kind, but I feel like that is a huge piece of what made my textile production company viable, was being able to like say, yes, Crate and Barrel, I can make 100 of those blankets, even though they are all one of a kind. They're all going to have like the same coloration. They're going to be the same size. They're going to have the same, but each individual square of those blankets is obviously going to be cut from like a different sweater or whatever the material was I was using. So can you speak a little bit to that? Like how have you been able to create a repeatable design with Rentrayage?
So, there's two ways. So the first way is really easy. It's just using dead stock fabric. That might feel like cheating. It's not.
It's not.
I just, as someone who's worked in the industry my entire career, no one is going to use those fabrics. And if you do not use those fabrics, they start to grow mold. I've seen these fabrics like in devastating conditions simply because, it didn't come in at exactly the right color and they're not going to put it on the line. And suddenly that's 4,000 yards. I mean, this happens all the time. It's just something that people should be taking advantage of. And then the other thing, and this is, I think we really want the dead stock to sell well because it's like it's the easier route. But what sells well is the vintage, the upcycle vintage, even to really mainstream stores like Neiman's. And so where we try to focus our attention is on things like menswear, because menswear, we're making women's clothes, but a men's blazer I can find over and over and over and over again, especially where we live, men's jeans you can find over and over and over again, men's suiting shirts. So really playing with these things in a way that allows them to also become the DNA of the brand. I mean, these are the things that will define us and that we need to just celebrate. So that's really done it. We've really just decided to focus what we're designing into.
That's really cool. I think that has like, there's so much, there's legs that come from that, right? Like menswear, like the consistency of whatever it is, button up shirts, they all have that front placket. They all got the collar. I mean, yeah, the collars might be different sizes and the buttons might be different colors, but like generally the shapes are the same, even, and I think that has there's so much value in and just acknowledging the repeatability makes your business viable or not, right? Like if you had to photograph every single piece that you produced differently because they're that different from one to the next, it would be cost prohibitive, or your pricing would be like so high that it would be, then that would be cost prohibitive. So I think it's something that, it's really worth the attention that goes into it. And, somebody who comes in fresh might not have the knowledge or the experience to know like what pieces of clothing in our culture have that kind of consistency. But to, as you just shared, the menswear tends to be more consistent for, there's not as many variations for men. I mean, in some ways that's nice, right?
It is. I mean, we started using like dresses and some other women's wear, and that was also really special. What we created was really special each time. So I do believe that there's room for these special dresses. And I think as technology improves, it's actually going to be really easy for us to get these things online in a beautiful way. That being said, like you got to understand a customer's not going to scroll forever. Right. So it is about creating things that you can kind of bite deeply into and really establish as a language for yourself and create like styles that people want to come back to you for.
And have like that consistency, right? Like even if there's variation and there's like, I love the term that you just used, the halo effect of these beautiful, like high end, one of a kind dresses that are super special. It kind of like, it shines this beautiful light on the rest of the collection. And it might not be attainable to everybody, but it's eye candy. It brings people in. It's like what people are inspired to see. And maybe there's, a special occasion or a wedding that comes that's like a reason to then circle back and take that offer and make it something that they are able to work toward and acquire for that special day. So cool. And okay, so you come out of the Gap, you go to Parsons, Rentrayage. First you Suno, and then Rentrayage came to be. And now you are based in New York City. And tell me about like the structure of your business. Are you wholesaling? Are you selling to stores?
We do. We wholesale. And we have some big accounts. I mean, we have Neiman's, we have Nordstrom's, we've been in Bergdorf's. We're in some specialty stores. We work with Ecrom a lot. So yeah, we do wholesale. I would love to do more just direct, but we don't really live in a world where it's like, if you build it, they will come anymore. It's this crazy world of marketing, et cetera, and you have to have a lot. There's a barrier to entry. It's just expensive. And so wholesale is a great way to get the word out.
So are you selling at like shows? Do you do trade shows, or how do people find out about your stuff?
I mean, we really just sell for Fashion Week, and we really just reach out to specific stores and work with kind of sales executives and or showrooms to get the word out. We haven't done any trade shows. I think we will do a trade show this summer because we want to launch home.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh,
so,
cool.
yeah, which
That's
I'm really
exciting.
passionate about, actually. So, yeah, we're gonna start to dip our toes in that, but because it's like there's really just it's like me and then everyone else is a freelancer. I've worked with them for a long time. These are really experienced people, but there's like 5 or 6 of us total. It's we're kind of tiny,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
so we just don't have the bandwidth for a lot. But we're doing everything we can.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's also like, that creates this, like, it adds a layer of like exclusivity and specialness, because it's not like, you can't have 150 of those. There's only 2, and there's only 5 or 6 of us making this stuff. So, it kind of, it celebrates the fact that, it's a artisan, skilled labor, beautifully made collection of amazing pieces that are worthy of that. It's I think it's just like there's this sort of juxtaposition, right, of the mass produced Gap kind of stuff, right, that you're very well familiar with, and then Rentrayage, which is like this kind of, it just takes everything up like 100 notches, right? Just like, okay, you want beautiful, you want sustainable, let me make something and sell you something that's going to be this coveted piece that's going to last in your wardrobe for how long it keeps you feeling beautiful. And it's not designed for like that one time wear. It's not designed to be like that, disposable thing that doesn't really matter, because it really does matter. And there's a lot of, I can tell just by looking at your collection that there's just a lot of thought and love that goes into the production of each piece. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we can produce. And then I think about the future as we can produce like a pretty decent amount of quantities, but then keeping certain things really special and limited. And then I think about the future, and it really involves working with retailers to, we can't do this fabric, we're going to run out, but we can do this fabric.
Mm-hmm.
And then hopefully with home, we create a few things, we can do things like recycled glassware that are easier to produce in larger quantities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And partner those together. That's so cool. I'm so excited for you. That's a really big step. Like, diversifying, you're going to be in a whole different market, and you're going to be able to kind of marry these two, it's like one life, but different markets, right? Like the same customers will like both collections, I'm thinking.
Yeah. For me, it's always just been about, I was like, I need to be able to buy something and not feel so guilty, and I was just dealing with a lot of consumer guilt over everything that I was purchasing, because I just knew that it was likely creating waste. And so now so much of what I purchase is vintage, which is great, but it's like the colors might be faded, or it's a little, you want things that have that freshness. So that's what we're trying to reinvigorate everything with.
Yeah, that's cool. I want to just make a suggestion, which I learned I think it was within the last year. There was a point in time, I think it was in the 80s, where citizens started becoming consumers, and like we are referred to as consumers. Like we're not people, we're consumers. We're not
Right.
citizens, we're consumers. And if we could just bring back the idea of being a citizen rather than a consumer, it sort of changes things up a little bit, and it sort of gives us a little bit more power, I think, to direct where, what we do and how our purchases, the impact of our purchases. So just a suggestion, and maybe that would be something helpful to just alleviate some of that guilt and make or remind you, or anybody out there who's listening, that the choices that we make are actually really important, and they actually do have quite a substantial impact when they get kind of all put together and looked at as a whole. So I'm excited to learn more about your home collection. But right now, if you guys are just tuning in, I'm chatting with Erin Beatty. Her company, Rentrayage, is amazing. You got to check it out. It's ragstoriches.com. And I'm going to spell that for you. It's RentrayAGE.com. And beautiful fashion brand. And just really, just go look at it. And we're going to learn more about the home collection she's introducing right after this short break. Today's episode of Rags to Riches podcast is brought to you by the Stitcherhood Recycling Society, my online membership community for creative textile upcycling, recycling, and reuse entrepreneurs. Inspiration, shared experience, tutorials, business savvy, and connection to a whole posse of people who understand the passion and intricacies of running an environmentally kind, creative textile upcycling biz. Daily posts, weekly stitch hours, book recommendations, group chats, member profiles, and strong connections is what you can expect when you join Stitcherhood. Head on over to stitcherhood.crispina.eco and sign up for a free 7-day trial to see if my Stitcherhood Recycling Society is a good fit for you and your textile upcycling business. All right, we're back with Erin Beatty from Rentrayage. And Erin, we were just talking about your introduction of your home collection, and I'd love to know, well, you talked a little bit about how it was kind of to help people know that when they're purchasing things that they're not having this like consumer guilt, and that the pieces that you're designing and selling are, have a sustainability component. Can you talk a little bit more about how you'll launch your line and what is included in your line and what you sort of see coming forward, like as you progress?
Yeah. So we currently carry home goods produced by sustainable artisans on the website, and they're like incredible. They're like recycled glassware from Mexico or from Morocco, and these carved bowls that he finds the fallen down trees in the countryside of England, and asks the owner if he can carve a bowl from them. It's really like, it's incredible things. And we really wanted to contribute to that storyline, but also create something that we could then sell outward. And so we do a lot of upcycled things. So we do a lot of linens made from old linens, where we cut them up and sew them back together in kind of a patchwork style, which is really beautiful. It also allows you to get rid of the stained pieces. Often we'll over dye them. We've done it with natural dyes, which is really beautiful, and doesn't necessarily last forever. And we're also doing it with some clean organic dyes, which can last a little bit longer. And then pillowcases made with dead stock home materials, as well, a recycled glassware program that we're so excited about. I have not seen the final samples. This is not for the faint of heart, this home development. We're doing these eco linens made of this kind of like green bamboo viscose, which I'm really excited about because it's fully traceable and regenerative. So it's actually kind of contributing to the ecosphere. And we're doing these upcycled ceramics that they're dead stock ceramics that they have, that the factory hasn't sold. And then we're reglazing them with ash from a recycling plant.
Oh my God, that sounds so cool. Awesome.
It's so cool. So yeah. We'll see when we get there, but yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, just to kind of commiserate, that might not be the right word, but like running a business is definitely not for the faint of heart. I mean, I joke about it. I'm like, it's not boring. This is not boring, but there's challenges, right? There's always like a hurdle. It doesn't matter how long you've been in business. It doesn't matter how much experience you have. There's always, things that are just like, like is it a hurdle? Is it a wall? How am I going to get around it? Do I want to get around it? Like, and you kind of have to always, for me anyway, and I'd love to kind of just get your input on that, is like, it always seems like there's these, for a long time I thought like, it was like, my heart would go fast and I'd be like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And now I'm like, okay, I got to assess what I think, my initial like response is, okay, get over the hurdle. But like, let me just think about this. If I get over the hurdle, I'm going to be going this way, but maybe I need to take a turn here. Maybe this is like something that's teaching me something that I need to like relook at or reassess. So I kind of look at those things as kind of opportunities to kind of take a step back for a minute and just kind of go, okay, what is the outcome that's the best outcome for me in the situation? And look at it as, rather than as something that needs to kind of get solved more than, rethink it. Is this a lesson or is this a hurdle? Right. So I think that, introducing a collection of home goods is, of course, there's going to be all kinds of things that you don't know what's going to happen. And it's just such a cool thing to continue to take those risks and to be like energized and excited about new things, right? Like that's a really awesome aspect of running a business, is that you can always do that. You can always be learning something new and like supporting new artisans and, working with different groups that might be otherwise unknown. So kudos to you for just, stepping outside of what right? Like your history's all in fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, thinking about Rentrayage, like I don't know if you've thought, I mean, you probably have, but like 3 years from now, what everything came together exactly, like just in the most amazing ways. Like what do you how do you see your business, and what would you like it to be like in that time frame?
I mean, I have a lot of visions. It's almost, sometimes you almost get scared saying them out loud, but do it. I really want us to have a facility where we can manufacture and distribute. I would love for it to be up here, closer to up here, so we can provide jobs. And also because I think people don't necessarily always want to be in the city anymore, I also am just so inspired by nature. For me, it's actually critical to my existence, like to my well-being. And so I'd love for that to exist. I would like for us to be, fully self-supportive. I would like for us to have our own standalone stores where you can go in and you can, shop for these special pieces of clothing, or you can buy home goods or gifts, or you could learn about water wastage or various kind of things happening within that area around conservation. I also would love to have maybe not, beauty products or, functional oils or, scents, really kind of expand this concept. And then I would love for us to also be able to highlight other upcyclers, so that we could have little exhibits and little places where people could sell, their own goods. Because a lot of people are much happier being artisans. I think I come at this with a slightly larger mindset, only in that I worked in major businesses before. And so I really want to create this as an avenue. But I ultimately want us to be able to sell other people's goods as well.
I love that. And I also really love the scale that you think on. I think like what you just said it just resonates so strongly with me. Like in my history, and I had my production company, and I was always like bigger. Like and then at one point I was like, okay, hold on. Like I don't really think I have the skill set that I need to get bigger and still stay happy. So I need a pivot. And that's when I kind of just decided to focus more on teaching and having, a presence in the textile upcycling arena where I can bring people together in ways like, with the podcast and with the summit, and just like, making the kind of person to person interactions happen. And then to know that you're out there like going, okay, well, I the vision of having like, bricks and mortar places that people can go and learn, and also, pop-ups with other like smaller artisanal producers. It's just like, that's just such a great idea. I love it. I love to dream about that with you, and just like, oh, that's so cool. Like how, and then that's another thing that I think I'm sure that you've experienced, like just, when I was in the fashion industry for a few years with my business and, making recycled clothing and selling it to stores at a wholesale event or many wholesale events. And, at the time, when I was like 1992, people did not understand what I was talking about. Like, I can make you 12 of these hoodies. They're all going to be in this color family, but they're not going to be exactly like this one. Like that gentle education and the repeated like kindness and just trying to explain to people to understand how the production of my product was working. A lot of times it was like I was met with like a little bit of criticism, like, well, what are you going to do for next season? And my whole response was always like, I'm going to upcycle the sweaters or the whatever it was, denim, men's shirts, whatever that I was upcycling. They'll be different because the materials will be different. And, in the upcycling arena, there's like a community, like people are really into supporting each other. Whereas in that traditional fashion setting, it's a lot more competition in my experience. It's a lot more like, don't look at my shit because you're going to copy it, or, oh, that's my shit, my silhouette for next season. And it's like, in this arena, people are more concerned with what is their structure of values than what is their bottom. Of course, we're all concerned with our bottom line because you can't have a really sustainable business if you don't have a profit margin. But you do have to have that compassion and that connection, right? Do you feel that? Do
My gosh. I mean, I think a huge thing that I want to create with Rentrayage is also a different style of business. A different way of managing, a different, making sure that everyone is truly a part of our business, making sure that everyone who's really worked with us, like, who really is stuck, like, they've been there the whole time.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and that's kind of who I am. It's just fundamental to me. And honestly, I think that competition and that anguish, I think it causes so much heartache and fear. It's the patriarchy.
Yeah.
And these designers, these creative people, they aren't meant to fit into that. They're just being forced, they're forcing themselves into it. And so that's what I love about working with the upcycling community and the artisans is it's much more emotional, and it's much more about what you want to create. And I think that there's something really beautiful about that. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. Fuck the patriarchy. It's like, it's time for a change.
Mm-hmm. It really is. And I think it's happening. I feel like it's so exciting when, I stop and look back at my career and like 35 years in textile upcycling. And first of all, people understand it now. People want to understand it. And there's women involved. Like I was, when I first started buying material and volume for my business, there was one woman I dealt with, and all the other suppliers I dealt with were men, and they all had naked lady posters on their office walls. And I shouldn't say all of them because there was a very few who didn't, but like that was just standard. Like you just had to, deal with that. And I feel like that is really shifting, and it's so exciting to just have a community of like-minded, awesome people who are really focused on the same goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really think community is the way forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, being able to create jobs for people that give them a good life. Like that's just amazing. Like what a lovely gift to give your community. Like that's, awesome.
I don't see AI being able to upcycle.
I know, me either. I'm like,
I mean, it's possible. Never say never, but that it's also kind of that they find some comfort in that.
Yeah, it's true. And it's like, there's like I don't know, like the whole AI thing kind of freaks me out a little bit. I haven't really delved into knowing that much about it, but it seems a little dissonant. Like it's not going to help create community, I don't think.
No.
Yeah. So, well, I am so excited to learn about your passion and your I'm not going to say dreams. I think you're in a couple of years, I'm looking forward to visiting one of your bricks and mortar stores so I can learn from you about different environmental things that you're working on, and, see a pop-up with people who are selling their product there. So just kudos to you for stepping out and taking those risks and making it possible for people to learn about, textile upcycling and about other, if it's glass or jewelry or whatever other products you're going to throw in the mix. I think that's awesome.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for creating such a community.
Oh yeah, I love it. It's like my strong suit. I love people, and I think, I try not to read the news too much, but I honestly believe that most people are just simply magical, awesome beings with so much to offer the world. And I feel like we get bombarded with all the negative crap that is few and far between. Like, people are, when you assume people are going to be lovely, they are.
Yeah.
So thanks for being one of them, Erin. It's been such a pleasure just to learn more about you and your business. And I really look forward to staying connected and watching your company just blossom and continue to thrive.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fingers crossed. I appreciate that.
Yeah, sure. So if you're just tuning in, you guys, Rentrayage is where you need to go to check out more about Erin and her business. It's spelled RentrayAge.com. And of course, we'll have all kinds of links and show notes and images of Erin's work on our show notes page, so you can go there as well. Erin, thank you so much.
Thank you, Crispina. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Hey, so I'm over here and I'm serving you a giant air hug because you just finished another episode of the Rags to Riches Textile Upcycling Podcast. Thank you for being with me. Our music is provided by The Lucky Five. Learn more about them at thelucky5.com. Our show is produced and edited by Vandal Hyacinth. If you want to dive in deep, head over to ragstoriches.eco.